Hi everyone, my name is Awad Al-Breaki. I'm Chief Global Officer at Trends Research and Advisory, and I would like to thank the preceding speakers for setting the high standard for us all. And also I want to thank the recast of University of Tokyo for hosting us and welcoming us, especially Professor Satoshi for all the work you've done with us. Thank you. As the title of this panel suggests, ensuring global security is increasingly multi-sectoral and therefore increasingly complex. Today, we are often faced by multiple overlapping and simultaneous risks and crises. Conflict often escalates into situations having serious economic, humanitarian, health, and natural resources dimensions. Political instability is increasingly globally driven by economic and social factors and can also be encouraged by misuse of cyber and AI technology. Yet, technology has also a role of greatest importance in identifying, managing, and helping us to prepare for these risks and challenges. As security scenarios become more complex, we are fortunate that AI technology too is becoming more powerful and multifaceted and constantly extend its application to new use cases. Achieving sustainable security places a strong emphasis on prevention, an area in which AI shines due to its ability to analyze and make predictions. Therefore, the role and contribution of AI to real-world sustainable security will be focus of today's panel. With that, it's my great pleasure to turn to my preceding panelist. Our first panelist, Professor Masashi Sugiyama, is a professor of Department of Complexity Science and Engineering of Graduate School of Frontier Sciences, the University of Tokyo, and director of Riken Center for Advanced Intelligence Project. To his right is my dear friend Bilal Saab, who's our colleague at Trends and head of US Middle East practice, and also an advisor in the Scientific and Academic Council of Trends. I'm also delighted to introduce our next speaker, Professor Takisha Yari, a professor at Research Center for Advanced Science and Technology at the University of Tokyo. And also joining us virtually, Professor Luigi Martino, Director of Cybersecurity Academy at Khalifa University in Abu Dhabi, UAE, who's joining us virtually. I think I will start with you, Dr. Luigi, since you having an advantage on us, since you are joining us virtually. So you start, then I will continue with you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Awad, and for introducing me, and also thanks everyone. Good morning, everyone, and thank you also Trends and Japanese colleagues who to invite me in this very important and timely conference and panel. And in particular, thank you also to include this specific topic of discussion in front of the, let's call, escalation of artificial intelligence, a potential impact of artificial intelligence at international level or international system. And in particular, in few minutes, I would like to launch some concept that I consider very relevant in when we talk about, or when we evaluate the potential impact of artificial intelligence in the international system. And the main concept are particular four. I will talk about, or I will introduce briefly, that AI is a part of a cyberspace evolution, and then I will try to specify why. The second point is to consider AI as a tool of a geopolitical confrontation at international and also at a regional level. The third point is cybersecurity for AI and AI for cybersecurity, what this means at practical level. And the last point is the concept of AI weaponization. And then all of these four concepts are more questions than answers, as a just to create a sort of a provocation for the debate. Then when we talk about AI, we need to consider that artificial intelligence is a part of cyberspace evolution. And then indeed, artificial intelligence is based on the combination of ICT, information communication technologies, data, and how it's possible to combine the capability to combine these different levels in order to improve the several topics or several dimensions. I totally agree with the previous panelists that they talk about the implication of AI in health and then several dimensions. But indeed, we need to define what AI means and why is it relevant, why is a sort of a game changer in front of the current evolution of cyberspace or revolution of informatization. Then the first point is that one, to combine AI with the cyberspace evolution. This means that we have several implications related to AI which are connected with the cyberspace. One of these implications is to consider the main problems or issues related to cyberspace that we can have in the similar way in artificial intelligence. For instance, is a problem, the anonymity is a problem on AI or not? The second point is who detains the power in artificial intelligence, in terms not only in terms of political power, but also in technical power, because who detain the power can modify, for instance, the usage or the access to certain technologies. The third point related to cyberspace analogies with AI or cyberspace evolution related to AI is about the boundaries. Is there any geographical boundaries or not in this complex environment, etc.? Then the second point is that to consider, if we have to consider AI as a tool of geopolitical confrontation, given that the AI is a sort of a game changer, it means that it is used by nations to compete for the dominance of AI technology. And this competition is a part of the strategic interest, national strategic interest of the nations. And in particular, we are seeing a lot of investment and certain polarization among different nations on the competition of this geopolitical confrontation. In particular, we are seeing several investment of AI as a part of military or warfare tool. We are seeing, for instance, several investment to use AI to launch disinformation campaigns in order to push the national, the state agenda. And also we are seeing this a sort of maturity or sort of consideration of AI as an integral part of the strategic posture of state. What this means? This means that AI is a part of politicization of the national agenda. And then the main question here is how we are able in the future to limit the violence with the usage of the AI. How we will able to limit the usage of AI for military and political aims, or for military and political operations. This is another analogy with cyberspace. Then we have the problem of attribution, like in cyberspace, the problem of the limited, the normative framework that is valid in order to limit the negative usage of AI, and the problem of geopolitical confrontation, given that AI becomes a strategic asset, influenced not only the economic and the political sphere, but also the military power among the nations. In particular, this is clear in the confrontation between the US and China, but also the European Union, for instance, is a geopolitical actor with a normative power. At the regional level, for instance, we have these very interesting case studies of UAE as a regional actor which is investing in order to achieve this strategic position on AI sector. The third point is cybersecurity. We have a dual role in cybersecurity of AI, and another way, in other words, AI is playing a dual role in cybersecurity. On one hand, AI is able to enhance cybersecurity, for instance, in detecting threats, identify vulnerabilities, or to create a sort of automatization response to cyber attacks. This is another game changer, is a paradigm shift, because we can apply AI to create a sort of automatization of response to malicious behavior. But at the opposite side, according, for instance, to a statement in February provided by ChatGPT and OpenAI, this statement is clear. They released this a public statement to launch a sort of alarm, saying that we are aware that the states are using our tools, our capabilities to conduct malicious initiatives. And this is something that we need to consider. For instance, one of the main problem is that we need to create a sort of trust path in securing AI systems in order to evaluate if data are corrupted or manipulated, or if this manipulation can lead, for instance, in the miss or compromise decision-making process. Consider, for instance, the manipulation or the usage of corrupted data in a decision-making process in the military sector. What this implies, for instance, at the end of a decision-making evaluation, or the malicious usage of AI for a disinformation campaign, or at least the malicious usage of AI to install, for instance, the corrupted code in a certain coding process, etc. And this is the last point of my speech that I would like to share with my colleagues, the panelists, and also the attendants, the concept of AI weaponization. Given that AI is a part of the strategic agenda of state, Given that the AI is a part of a geopolitical confrontation, given that AI is able to manipulate also the cybersecurity or affect the cybersecurity or the security posture of states, this means that AI is used as political instruments or military instruments, and at the end of the day, is part of the concept of weaponization. It can be used as a weapon, as for instance, the cyber operations or cyber tools. I think that the main mistake is to consider technology as a neutral. Technology is not neutral. Indeed, it depends how we use technology. And AI is a part of this, our technology landscape. Indeed, the concept of AI weaponization refers to the development and the use of AI-driven systems, not only military applications, but also in these geopolitical confrontations. For instance, we are aware that AI is used to improve autonomous drones, cyber warfare tools, AI-powered surveillance systems, etc., etc. But for instance, we are aware that AI weaponization tools include also the problem of ethical layer in human control, or the ethical problem how to leave the final decision to AI systems or autonomous weapon systems, for instance. And the main problem of AI weaponization, this is the last part, is about the need of international regulation. How we can improve an international regulation system, effective international regulation systems, if we have another problem which is related to the cyberspace, the lack of trust. How we can improve trust if we don't know who is responsible of certain operations, for instance? How we can improve trust and confidence among the international systems, among the international actors, if we don't have this clear capacity of accountability. These are all of open questions. One answer can be, for instance, the open source AI system, or the creation of an international community that can work together in order to check the vulnerabilities and to disclosure this vulnerability. But at an international level, one of the main problem in order to make effective the international regulations is the mutual trust. I will switch off my microphone now just to say thank you again. This is just as I said, I have a lot of questions that I would like to share with you and the panelists. And thank you again for inviting me in this section.
Thank you, Dr. Martino. And you mentioned the weaponization of AI and a lot of ethical issues bringing to government, to societies, and also to non-state actor. And which this lead me to Professor Sugiyama. I think you in Riken project you dealt with the ethical and social issues of AI.
So how can I start? Do I present something?
The floor is yours. Just start like for an open discussion for 10 minutes, then we'll...
after this one?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. So I'm Masashi Sugiyama from Riken and University of Tokyo. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this great workshop. So okay, last year in April, I had the chance to visit UAE for the first time. That was really an amazing experience to me. So I visited actually MBZ UAI and we organized a workshop there. It's really fantastic. So I really liked it. Hope that I can have another chance to visit UAE and have more collaboration in the future. So my presentation is entitled More Reliability in Machine Learning. So I'm basically a scientist working on machine learning, theory of machine learning. So would you go to the next page, please? And here's one slide for introducing. Okay. So I have actually 3 jobs in my life. So first of all, I'm director of RIKEN Center for Advanced Intelligence Project. So RIKEN is a national research center in Japan, so really aiming like AI research in our center. But RIKEN does more like basic research in physics, chemistry, biology, and medicine, etc. Then, so it's actually a big center. We have actually more than 140 researchers and 35 teams. So it's really growing. And we have some teams working on ethics and legal issues also. Then, so I'm also a professor at the University of Tokyo. I belong to actually 2 schools, and I have 2 labs in different campuses. So my life is so complicated now. Then also, so we are living in Tokyo, so we have many local startups here. So it's great to work with those startup people, some CEOs and engineers. They are all great to work with. Then, so as I said, I'm a scientist working on machine learning theory and algorithm. My daily life is more like proving some mathematical theorem and doing programming and things like that. So my life is completely different from the topic of this workshop, unfortunately. But I believe so this basic research is really the key issue. Because AI is a technology. So of course, nowadays, it's the era of using AI for society. But still, it is a technological topic. So doing basic research really drives everything. So that's why we are so excited to work on fundamentals of AI. Okay, I do research on some topic and for, let's say, 10 years and publish a book. So I published already 6 books. So this means I'm more like 60 years old, but maybe I'm slightly younger than that now. Then I'm potentially also very much interested in applications, because nowadays machine learning is really useful in many problems. But it's completely impossible for me to do applied research. But I was so lucky that we have so great collaborators around, and I had the chance to work with many applications. Well, they did applications, and I just joined their project. But they were all quite interesting and successful. Then finally, I'm also quite active in doing academic activities. Like I did program chairs for some big machine learning conferences, and also I had chance to give a keynote talk at some nice conferences. Then, so my recent research is about coping with data scarcity. So all of you know that nowadays AI system is trained with training data. Having big amount of training data is almost always useful. But in reality, collecting like high quality label data is really difficult in many applications. Like in some simple like web-based applications, it's possible as long as you have enough time and money. But in other applications, like medical domains, or like in our RIKEN Center, we are also working on natural disasters. Then collecting big data is really challenging in those fields. Then, so our theoretical research. So we spent almost 10 years to work on this topic called weakly supervised machine learning. Now actually data is not fully supervised, but somewhat like weak, imperfect. But still, we mathematically proved that we can really train a predictor classifier as if we have fully supervised data. Already we had a nice like series of theorems and theories, and we published a book from the MIT Press 2 years ago. And here's a nice application of this weakly supervised learning. It's a simple task, denoising. So if we have speech, for example, with a microphone, we usually have a lot of noise, and then automatic translation is actually getting difficult. But to do noise removal, we basically need clean speech and noisy speech at the same time. By comparing these two, we can train a system to denoise for denoising. But collecting such parallel training data is often quite difficult. But our weakly supervised learning theory allows us to train such a system only from pure noise and noisy speech. We don't need clean speech, actually. But we can mathematically prove that. Still, we can actually train a system. So this worked really well, and we had the actually best paper award last year. Then that's one branch. Then another and more exciting branch of research we are working on is learning under changing environments. So of course, the real world is full of uncertainties and changing over time. But standard machine learning methods do not work well under changing environments. So we implicitly assume that our training data and our future is essentially the same in the same environment. But this is not really true. Like situations like that, we have training data from the left-hand side, but we want to make prediction on the right-hand side. So learning from the left-hand side does not really make sense to make prediction on the right-hand side. But we want to solve this kind of problem in reality. So how? And this topic is actually not really new, and already I organized a workshop at a machine learning conference in 2006, and we published a book from that workshop already 2009. And this book was actually not that popular at that moment, but luckily, other people started to find this problem quite important and interesting. So this book became nowadays quite popular in the last couple of years. The methodology here, I don't really go into the detail here, but not only simply learning training data directly, but we weight it based on the importance of training data. If some training data is quite important for our future, then we put higher weights. Otherwise, we downweight those samples. And by learning this importance quantity, so we can do this automatically and mathematically in the right way. And we spend a lot of time to develop some fundamental theory, and we actually published 2 books on these issues. And this topic is nowadays really hot in the machine learning community, but name was changed. So now it's called distribution shift or fine-tuning, so in the era of large language models. But at NeurIPS conference, for example, we had a series of workshops on these topics. And this year, I'm organizing this NeurIPS 2024 workshop on fine-tuning in modern machine learning. So this is really a hot topic, and I'm quite excited to have more progresses. And we did a lot of work also recently on extending these lines of research. Then, so future challenges. I have 2 slides. The first slide, so nowadays, already a lot of machine learning researchers are working on developing new methods and exploring new applications and making some world-breaking, record-breaking applications. But in other cases, so exploring new application domains is really challenging because we only have a few colleagues to work with and only a small amount of data. Then none of the machine learning method is usually useful. So far, we need a kind of strong assumption to justify our machine learning methodology. And if such implicit assumption is correct, then everything is fine. So this is how big IT companies are successful. But if the assumption is not satisfied, then it could be dangerous in some applications. So we don't know whether such assumption holds or not in reality. So that's an issue. Then, so our next challenge is to develop an algorithm with minimum guarantee and almost no assumption. So usually people try to have a new method that works well, but I'm not going to that direction. This is also important, but I'm not going to that direction. But I try to develop an algorithm with minimum guarantee, so under no assumption. Then actually this should be the first method everybody has to use in different problems. Because in the beginning, nobody knows whether your data is suitable for machine learning or your problem is suitable for applying machine learning. Then once we have a simple method like this, then this is the first method to apply and see whether machine learning is really useful or not. Once you identify machine learning is useful in your application, then maybe ask your boss to spend more money and assign more people. Then you could collect more data and you could have more knowledge on the problem. Then, so you have more assumptions, and then you should be able to apply more sophisticated machine learning algorithm. But we are missing still the first step. So this should be the first step, so we should use. And we are interested in this direction. Then last slide. So this is more like long-term goal. Society-wide optimization of personalized AI systems is quite important, I think. Because now large language models there and some foundation models are there, and people are using those central models. But already things are started. So people try to personalize the centralized system because we want to have more customized model at hand. Maybe easily, many people can just use their smartphones to download the model and maybe train it by yourself. Then, so as shown here, so we have actually many people along this axis. Then, so many people have their own AI systems. Then over time, those systems should be, evolved and extended. So then, so optimization over the entire society is really necessary. Because now there's a big centralized system, and big companies update it by themselves. But once we have a distributed system like this, then it's a kind of distributed optimization over the entire society. This is actually scientifically a completely open problem, and it actually has a full of challenges. It may contain computationally and energy efficiency, reliability and safety issues, and also, as Professor Harvard said in the first session, the explainability and also fairness appears here. So these are all quite challenging issues, but in this picture of society-wide optimization of personalized AI systems, we can actually efficiently incorporate all of the challenges here. So clearly, this challenge is way beyond what I can personally pursue. So hope that through this symposium, we can find collaboration between UAE and Japan and pursue some of the topics here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sugiyama. Now I will move to Dr. Bilal. Floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Almost good afternoon. I am typically a self-confident guy, but today's an exception. I'm pretty vulnerable for three reasons. Dealing with the three firsts. First time in Japan, I'm almost petrified of making a cultural faux pas. First time I'm speaking as a family member of Trends, even though I'm speaking in my personal capacity. And then the third one is the first time I'm talking about artificial intelligence, at least in a public forum, not in a private forum. I don't like this feeling. Anywhere I am, whether I'm in the White House, Congress, Pentagon, I'm typically self-confident. But today is an exception, and unfortunately for you. Look, I'll obviously limit my comments to what I know best, which is what Awad has asked me to talk about, which is the role of AI and its impact on international security. I know there's going to be some overlap with the next panel because we're talking about warfare, right? But I'll keep it at a higher level, more strategic, keep it general. And I'll limit the talk to four main parts. One is the usage of AI in the space of international security, its advantages, right? And keep in mind, there's going to be some overlap already with some of the things that my previous colleagues have mentioned, so bear with me. The second is the weaknesses, some of the weaknesses that we've already seen of AI, at least in the world of defense. Its sort of risks. I mean, this is a high stakes, space when we're talking about international security. This is not civilian applications. This is not kind of like the Internet of Things, right? If something goes bad, lives are lost. So we're talking about real high stakes here. And finally, I'll just want to end with how we could sort of mitigate the risks of AI in the space of international security. So if I were to ask you what is the most important currency in international relations, international security, I would tell you it's not weapons, it's not economic power, it's actually information. And this is where AI is huge. This is where AI is king. It's not necessarily about collecting more information, although that's always important. It's not about volume, it's not about size, it's about speed, and I think you mentioned speed. And boy, talk about huge advantage when you are a country that has decision advantage over your adversary, where you can make decisions faster, you can make decisions a whole lot quicker that will easily have an impact on the battlefield. And so it's really less about volume, more about the quickness with which AI can help you collect, process, interpret information that is incredibly important for you as you engage your adversary. So you can put that under the category of decision support, decision advantage. Whoever has more interesting capabilities in AI in that field will have the advantage in competition, confrontation, you name it. In the space of electronic warfare, I mean, I don't know how many of you know a lot about electronic warfare, but it's pretty damn difficult stuff, okay? Interpreting signals, interpreting all sorts of data coming at you. With the use of AI, you could do it much more efficiently and much more quickly. And talk about cognitive electronic warfare, where now this is the next thing in AI when it comes to electronic warfare, which means that your capabilities in AI are actually able to adapt to the tactics of your adversary and synthesize countermeasures in real life. I mean, this is just revolutionary stuff. Cyber, I'm not going to say much about cyber. I've got Mohammed Suleiman here. There's no chance I'm going to say anything about cyber without embarrassing myself. But, there's a defensive side of things when it comes to cyber and the role of AI, and then offensive. I mean, with cyber, obviously, defensively, all sorts of ways where you can protect yourself from intrusion, and then just vice versa. Offensively, you can overwhelm the system of your adversary, and so on and so forth. So there's plenty of application in cyber. We've seen it already, obviously, in real life. And I think it was Qais who mentioned that in his presentation. None of this is theoretical. This is real life. This is actually happening before our own eyes. It's got practical applications. And what we're trying to do here, which is exactly what we're trying to do in this conference, is to try to understand really the value of AI, its applications, how do you leverage it, how do you keep adults in the room so that you really mitigate the risks of it. None of this is theoretical, and it's only going to advance, it's only going to improve down the road, and whoever doesn't use it is going to be left behind. It's not an option, okay? It's not an option. You can't just not invest in AI anymore, especially in my field of defense and international security. Otherwise, you're going to be at a massive disadvantage, regardless of the ethics, regulations, safeguards, and all those things. But it's not an option nowadays not to invest in AI, especially in international security and defense. Now, okay, is it perfect? No, of course it's not. No technology is. But let me just mention some of the weaknesses, at least, of AI, because actually it could end up being a dumb technology, not as smart as you thought it was, if it's not given the proper training, the proper guidance, the proper instructions to do the job that you think it's actually supposed to be doing, right? So one of the weaknesses of AI, obviously, especially in international security and defense, is, well, if you're not giving it the proper training, it might come up with the wrong conclusions, right? How many of you are social scientists? Probably many in the room. Correlation is not causation, right? So AI can tell you what the picture is, but it can't actually tell you what exactly that picture means, right? So I'll give you an analogy. There's correlation between, especially in the summertime, the number of people dying from drowning and the increase in sales of ice cream. Okay, there's a correlation between the two. Is there any causation? No. What the hell does one have to do with the other? Nothing. But AI cannot actually tell the difference between the two. All it can give you is just a correlation between the two. So this is where, obviously, human intervention is most critical, and you can't just rely, especially on a strategic level, on AI, especially when it comes to command and control issues, when it comes to conflict, when it comes to weapon systems, you name it. As long as you understand the limitations of the technology and you pair it with human intervention at the most critical stages of decision making, then you should be in good shape. The risk is, as this technology continues to advance, as it becomes more accessible and is proliferating, to Dr. Abdisam's presentation, you are going to inherently, inevitably rely more and more on it, which means that your systems are going to be much more vulnerable to intrusion, to attack, to compromise. And the moment that happens, you guys have seen it throughout the Cold War, right? Those kinds of technologies, when they are compromised, it could create a whole lot of problems for you, especially when it comes to command and control issues, right? So if I'm compromising your systems of AI, and I have already put in a lot of burden on AI to come up with certain critical decisions, then you're going to be in a very vulnerable position, right? And I hope that we never get to a point where we overburden AI, overwhelm AI to the point of making some pretty significant strategic decisions, right? At the lower level, that's perfectly fine. At the middle manager level, that's perfectly fine. Speed up, make it as efficient as possible when it comes to decision making. But good God, involve senior leadership in strategic decision making as much as possible. Have plenty of room for that senior commander, that senior leader to come up with decisions that could be facilitated by AI, but certainly not determined by AI, right? And this is something I think that Dr. Muhammad has mentioned at the very beginning when it comes to issues of education, right? This is not just for your technical person. This process of education should span across the board, right? Everybody has to understand the uses of AI, whether you're a senior commander, whether you're a low-level officer, because if you don't understand it, this is where you really get into trouble, right? And accountability, right? Also, Dr. Muhammad talked about that. Transparency. All of those concepts are not slogans. They're incredibly critical when it comes to issues of AI, right? And so we're all learning about this promise of the technology, but very few people actually understand its real-life applications, especially in a world of high stakes of defense and international security. Now, Other weaknesses that I can think of. It's a black hole. I mean, how does AI actually come up with its decisions? So it's just like any other decision, if you want to start doing some auditing on a certain decision, right? So you understand the moral, ethical ramifications of a certain decision. Can you tell me how AI actually came up with a certain decision? No, it's incredibly complicated. Can AI multitask? Okay, if you come up with different models that will do separate functions, then yes, they can multitask. But a single model cannot multitask. For example, let's just think about targeting, right? You identify the target, you come up with a matching weapon system to engage it, and then you make a decision. AI can't do all three. Now, thank God they can't do all three, because I actually want a human being to determine the last phase of that targeting process. But multitasking is not the forte of AI, at least today, right? Once again, if you come up with different models doing separate individual functions, maybe you can get to multitasking. But for now, it's a single function operation, right? And again, it's not necessarily a bad thing in international security. I'd rather have a narrow function for AI, very constrained mode of operating, as opposed to sort of giving it a broad set of functions whereby there is less room for human intervention, less room for making the system responsible for its decisions, and so on and so forth. Last but not least, in terms of weaknesses that you can mitigate, I mentioned to you the problem of the inability to understand context. So context matters, okay? It's not just about identifying a certain picture, the pixels, and so on and so forth. You gotta place that detail in its proper context, right? And this is where human beings obviously are incredibly critical. AI can't do that for you. No matter how smart the system is, no matter how smart the model is, all it can give you is to identify that picture, and you have to place it in its proper context. Now, as long as we understand that, we're good. Once again, do not overwhelm the system, do not overburden the system to come up with things that it was never tasked to do. If it's not part of the training for the model, then don't expect it to do that for you. All right, so last but not least, in terms of some recommendations, right, recognizing this is not a perfect technology, just like any other, right? Education, okay? I mean, this is the purpose of this conference, right? As broad an education process as possible. Just teach this stuff at, I'm not going to say elementary school or middle school, but at high school and above, right? We need to understand this because this technology is going nowhere. It's only going to go forward. It's only going to be invested by as many countries as possible. And so for us to better understand it, especially in the field of international security and defense, is absolutely paramount, right? Beyond education, I would mention a few more that I wrote down right here. Safeguards. I mean, every single person who sat in this chair talked about safeguards. Those are absolutely critical. Best practices, code of conduct, right? I mean, we've dealt with all this stuff before. It's not like this is brand new in international security. Every time we've come up with a new technology, we've had to agree on certain standards, certain code of conduct, certain regulations, and so on and so forth. AI should be no different whatsoever, right? I don't know how you get there, but we can certainly learn from best practices from previous times, whether it's during the Cold War or after the Cold War, when we engaged in what we call arms control practices, right? Arms control has a fantastic legacy of cooperation on multiple domains, on multiple technologies. AI should be no different whatsoever. Now, in this day and age of incredible competition, who mentioned great power competition? The first speaker on the screen, right? Can we get to those levels of cooperation that would be sufficient to regulate AI? I'm a little bit more skeptical nowadays, especially between the competitive relationship between the United States and China and Russia, all of whom are investing heavily in AI. But that's the North Star. That's exactly what we should be doing when it comes to regulation, when it comes to understanding the risks, when it comes to understanding the promise of AI. This needs to be an international conversation. This cannot be limited to a single country. Nobody has a monopoly of this, over this technology anyway. So we might as well just have at least a conversation, start a conversation about it in order to get to a certain set of agreements on its use, on its challenges, and so on and so forth. I know this is going to be impossible. It's going to sound naive, but good God, try to limit the use of this in offensive operations. Just keep it limited to the defensive domain. Right? This is where it gets very tricky. And I talked about, you know, during the Cold War, there were certain understandings about what to strike and what not to strike, especially when it came to command and control centers. Dr. Ibtisam talked about nuclear powers and nuclear weapons. there was a very clear understanding about what to attack and what not to attack during the Cold War. AI should be part of this conversation, even though not as critical, obviously, as nuclear bunkers, nuclear command and control centers. But this is a critical technology that's going to be incorporated further and further into very strategic weapon systems that are going to require us to have a conversation about not to be used in offensive operations, right? Just keep it to the extent possible, limit it to defensive operations. But obviously this is all a function of how international security is going to evolve and how bilateral relations between great powers are going to evolve and whether they're going to commit to something like this. I mean, heck, I woke up this morning to CNN at midnight asking me to do an interview about how the hell pagers blew up in Lebanon. So obviously, I have no clue how they blow up in Lebanon, but just think about that, whether AI could do similar things when it comes to stuff blowing up in all sorts of places across the globe, and we don't have any understandings or any regulations about how this stuff could be used or not used. So international cooperation, absolutely. It is absolutely critical. Regulation, standards, safeguards, and an agreement to focus more on defensive applications of the technology in international security as opposed to offensive operations. Thank you, Howard.
Thank you, Bilal. As you said, the regulation, international cooperation is very important, and I will come in the Q&A question. I need to know more about how we can encourage government and the international community. So thank you. And now I'll move to my last speaker, Professor Takeshi. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this session. I am Takeshi Sayari from RCAST, University of Tokyo. And I have been an AI researcher for more than 25 years. But you may doubt it because I'm wearing jacket and a tie today. So as you know, real AI researchers believe to wear only shirt like Professor Sugiyama. Yeah, but anyway, yeah. Now I'm working on the topic of AI for health management of industrial systems. So let me introduce this topic today. So as you know, our modern society relies on a variety of large-scale industrial systems and infrastructure, such as energy, transportation, manufacturing, and so on. If any of these essential systems stopped working suddenly due to unexpected malfunctions or failures, our daily lives would be much affected and the consequences would be very severe. So, to prevent such serious accidents, research and development of health management for industrial systems is very essential. Traditionally, the research and development of health management had been conducted independently within each industrial domain. But recently, PHM or prognostics and health management has emerged as a discipline to develop methodologies applicable to various domains. More importantly, AI and machine learning play the major role in this PHM study, partly because modern industrial systems generate far more data than humans can process. In the study of system health management, there are several major topics. First, anomaly detection is to detect signs or symptoms of failure or malfunctions as early as possible. Diagnosis is to classify the anomalies and identify their root causes. Remaining useful life or RUL prediction is to estimate the degradation of the system components and predict the appropriate timings for maintenance or replacement. Finally, optimization of system operation is to operate the system to function efficiently and robustly in uncertain conditions. All these research topics in PHM can be translated into typical machine learning tasks such as supervised classification and regression, unsupervised learning and reinforcement learning, and so on. So far, this approach to system health management based on machine learning has been very successful, but we still have some technical challenges. Not surprisingly, most of those technical challenges are reduced to the issue of data scarcity. For example, in anomaly detection and diagnosis, anomalous data is significantly scarce compared with normal data. In the remaining useful life prediction, there is very little data where system components are operated until failure. So, in most cases, we cannot directly use supervised learning methods, which are the most reliable and promising approach. But I am optimistic about these technical issues because I believe that the machine learning researchers will overcome these issues by exploring methods such as semi-supervised learning, domain interpretation, physics-informed machine learning, and so on. The more challenging issues researchers like us are facing are related to company policies and national regulations. For example, when we collaborate with companies operating industrial systems, they are often reluctant to share their data and research findings. So we often find it to present the research findings at the international conferences or in academic journals. Besides, since the research of health management of such critical systems is related to the country's industries, there are economic security concerns, which makes international collaborative research difficult even for academic purpose. So, our challenge here is how we can find a balance between the academic interests that should be shared by all researchers and the interests of the organizations we are affiliated with. Finally, I'd like to mention the ethical challenges in the system health management. As I already emphasized, AI and machine learning research for system health management is essentially beneficial to the whole humanity. But we still cannot escape ethical challenges just like other AI applications. One question is to what extent we can entrust decision-making in the operation of critical industrial systems to AI. Another question is whether we should replace humans in the industries by AI or enhance them with AI. I believe we must consider and discuss these questions carefully and openly. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Professor. I think the most issue here is ethical and how we can provide some kind of governance to AI. So this is a question for all of us, and I will start with Luigi. Doctor, about the governance of AI in the international domain through government, through international community, or through civil society. How you think we can encourage government to adapt to AI and also to agree among themselves to have some kind of norm or some kind of regulation of AI? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Howard, for this tricky question, and then it's is a $1 billion question, that one, because how we can improve the international collaboration, the international cooperation on disruptive technologies. One of the very interesting analogy, and then I totally agree with my colleagues and the other panelists, and particularly with Belal, is the analogy with the nuclear sector, and then why in the nuclear sector, for instance, we have this kind of very effective collaboration, and why we don't have the same in other sector. The answer might be based on a sort of theoretical framework that we can apply in order to explain the international system. According to the realist theoretical framework, states are very, let's call them very intelligent actors, because they are very rational actors, because they base their evaluation on benefit and cost. Cost, the balance between benefit and cost. The question is, in this evaluation, the question is a more benefit. It's more as if I apply an international collaboration system, or in a sort of a cooperative system, it's more beneficial for me to cooperate instead to fight. In the nuclear sector, the answer is yes, because we have a sort of zero-sum game. And then on the opposite side, we have a win-win solution if we cooperate, because we can destroy each other. In cyber, or also in AI at the moment, we don't have this evaluation. It's a more, let's say, beneficial to continue this confrontation instead to have a sort of mutual collaboration at theoretical level. But at practical level, how we can improve it, just to try to answer your question, how we can improve the international collaboration. As I said before, in order to improve the international collaboration, but not only at international level, also among the family or among friends, we need to improve trust. If we don't have trust, we cannot have a dialogue. Because if I don't trust you, I will not put my destiny in your hands. This is the most important things. And then here, the another point is how we can improve, for instance, accountability. Because I need trust, but also I need a very effective regulatory framework in order to punish if you are not following the rules. This is my answer. I don't know if I replied to your question.
No,
but
that's okay. Yeah, you
yeah.
replied. Thank you, Doctor. Professor Sugiyama, I've read that in Riken project, you've dealt also with some of the ethical challenges of
Yeah, so in our weekend project, we have actually 3 groups, and one group is working on more theoretical machine learning research, and second group is working on more applied AI research to societal problems. Then the last one is working on like ethical issues and legal issues of AI. So these 3 are kind of harmonized in our center, and this is like a big challenge for us. But often, like this kind of discussion is a kind of trade-off between like regulating things and like freedom of research and things like that. I don't like this kind of atmosphere, because technology can actually push the boundary. So it's not a like zero-sum game. So once we improve technology, then I think we can improve like the security issues and technology at the same time, utility of the technology at the same time. So hope that like more fundamental research should be put forward in that direction.
Okay, thank you. Bilal, in terms of encouraging government to adapt to some kind of norms and regulation.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for, norms. So look, we're not reinventing the wheel here. What we're trying to do here, what we're in the business of, is to promote socialized norms in the international system, and obviously in this case, norms of AI. And we've done it before. And it's the old-fashioned way. You either create institutions, right? So, for example, think of weapons of mass destruction. How many institutions have we created? The CWC, BWC, the MPT. So those are institutions that in many ways could help socialize the norms of the usage of AI. Are we there yet? No, of course not. But that's one way to do it. Is it ambitious? Yes, but we have to do it at some point. Then to Luigi's comment, which is much less ambitious, I think more feasible, is the bilats, right? So you are expanding partnerships between countries that are actually friendly towards each other. US, Japan, US, UAE, UAE, Japan, all of NATO, right? It's easier to have a conversation between friends as opposed to with adversaries. But even that has value, right? If you're in the business of socializing, expanding that knowledge, if you start with friends and then with the hopes that at some point you can actually get to talking to your adversaries, that's a good start. Because we are, once again, trying to expand that knowledge sphere about AI as much as possible. If you start with friends, no problem. The most ambitious one is a summit. Right? I mean, climate change. Look at COP, what is it now, COP 28? Okay, why don't we do a summit on AI? Well, what's holding us from doing that? So that's obviously the most ambitious, but you know, again, we're not reinventing the wheel. There are many mechanisms, ways to promote, to socialize the norms of AI. It all requires leadership, once as always, right? Leadership, willingness, a certain level, sufficient levels of investment in it, and an understanding, recognition that this technology is here to stay. It's not going away. I'm yelling, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Bilal. Professor Takeshi, can you add more to the how we can manage the...
Okay. Yeah, as I am a AI researcher, so I like freedom of research, but still I believe that there should be minimum regulations, because for now I believe that AI is under control of we humans, but it cannot be guaranteed in near future if this development speed is continue. So that means there is a risk that AI cannot be controlled by humans. So I think we need some minimum regulations about AI development.
So the scientists need more freedom and and the government officials.
This is always a discussion, right?
Yeah,
From
it's always a
scientific viewpoint, we want to have freedom, but from the
Yes.
regulation viewpoint, of course,
Yes.
regulating is more important.
But striking this balance, I think,
Yeah,
is,
but this shouldn't be a trade-off.
it
That's
shouldn't
my
be a
strong
trade-off, but
opinion.
it takes time, I think, for scientists to understand, or also for government officials to understand. So I think we come to an end. Sorry for that, and I would like to thank the panelists, thank Professor Sugiyama, Bilal, and also Dr. Takeshi, and also Dr. Luigi for your provoking and this very, very great discussion. And I would like to thank also the audience for their listening to this great discussion. And also I would like to end the session now. And it's going to be a lunch break for 1 hour. So thank you very much.